Okay, so this is the third video on the Raspberry Pi Pico, and what we're going to do on this one is solder on the header pins. If you've never soldered before, this will be a useful little video to show you the technique of how to solder. So what I've got a soldering iron, and I think it's quite important, I've got a nice fine tip on that soldering iron. I've got solder. This is lead tin solder. But it is really thin stuff, and I think that's really useful. If you use the thick stuff, you're more likely to bridge across a couple of pins. Got a nice area to do it, and because I'm over 40, I have reading glasses. So I'm going to zoom in, and then I'm just going to show you how to solder the pins. So if you haven't soldered before, I would recommend you give it practice first, and what they suggest you do is use this prototyping board to stick the pins in, and then that will keep them all aligned when you solder the pins into the Pico. So what I've done is I've got a spare bit of breadboard and a spare couple of pin headers, and I'm just going to set that up to solder on this board. Let's have a look, say one there, and so I've put those in the board. Let's put this on there. So there you go. That's kept everything nice and aligned. So I'll just get that to focus and zoom in. So you can see that nicely aligned. What I will now do is I'll solder a couple of these and see if I can demonstrate how it's done. So where the camera is focused, what you want to do is you want to get the tip of the soldering iron. It's nicely tinned. You can see that, nicely tinned. And then you want to hold it so it's touching both the track and the pin, and then feed the solder in. Now because this is thin, I do need to put quite a lot on. So there you go, that's how to do it. I'll do a couple more, do another one on this side. Now if you're worried about the alignment, only do two and then take it out and check that it's still all in line. But I'm going to carry on. So I'll do this one, I'll do a few in a row. There's one. Don't take the soldering iron off too quickly, and just leave it on there for a couple of seconds before you start adding the solder. With the thinner solder, it helps with preventing you put too much on at any one go. Try to avoid heating any other pads while you're soldering one. I'll review this footage in a minute and see what it looks like. But these look good to me. So I hope that's been a bit of a demonstration of how it works. Do a couple more there while the focus is. So there you go. What I'm now going to show you, and it's quite hard for me to do, is I'm going to mess it up. So I'm going to put, soldering is actually on, soldering iron tip is on two pads. So and you can see I'm doing that now. I haven't actually bridged the gap. I was hoping to bridge that gap. I'll just, right. So that has actually bridged two pins. I'll just angle that up. There you go. You can see that's angled two pins. So you've got a couple of options to take that off. I think the best one is to use a solder sucker. So to use a solder sucker, I'll just zoom out so you can see what it is. That's my solder sucker. It's sprung loaded. There's a plunger in here, and when you release the button, the plunger shoots back, sucking air down the nozzle and the solder with it. So I'll zoom in again. That one. So what you want to do here is you want to get the heat into it, get ready with the tip, heat it up, make sure it's runny, and there you go. That has managed to clean it up very nicely. So I'm happy that I can solder okay. I'm happy that everything's working, so I'll give it a go on the Pico. So the first stage of this is I've got the two headers here and I've put them into the breadboard. Now at this stage, make sure that you haven't pushed one of the pins through the plastic as you've inserted it in, because that's easy to do. And then what we'll do is we'll put that on and make sure it's seated correctly. So I'm happy with that. I'm not going to rush into it. I'm going to do one at each end first and inspect it to make sure it's all okay. So get ready, there we go. Okay, so that's the corners done. What I'll do now is just turn it slightly and zoom in. Right, so while that's still recording, I'll do some in the middle, just so you can see it. Before I pick the soldering iron up, or as I pick it up, I do wipe it on the sponge that I've got. Now when you're working like this, you need to be careful of where you're putting the soldering iron body, because you don't want this part, you don't really want any part of the soldering iron to hit some of these minor components here. So I'm actually going to turn it around a bit, so I'm approaching it from a different angle. There we go, that's better. If you're afraid you're putting too much heat into anything, then just solder one pin, solder one on the other side, and just give it a little rest. Now we've got all these components in this corner here, so I'll get that to focus. So we want to be extra careful where we are around those components. Okay, so that's looking okay. Let's do the ones down this end. I'm actually soldering around the camera, which isn't ideal, but it's getting good pictures, I think. Okay, so that looks good for that side. So now I just need to repeat it on the other side. I'll just show you the difference. I have to have some, so I'll put that by there. This is a thicker solder, and you can see it's slightly more awkward to use. It is possible though. Just have to be very careful because it goes on very quickly. I prefer the lighter stuff, to be honest. So carrying on. So there you go, that is all the pins done. Well, I'm quite happy with that. So I'll take a few still pictures just so you can see what it looks like close up. So while I look at these final pictures, I think it's important to say that once you've finished soldering, you really should be cleaning the board up. And I find the best solution to do that is a cotton bud and some nail polish remover. And the reason you want to clean off the board is because you might end up with little balls of solder where you don't want them, and you're definitely going to end up with flux over the pins. And that's highlighted very well on this last picture, because you can see a little ball of solder where you don't want it. I hope this video has been of some use to you guys. I'll be doing a few more videos on the Pico over the next few weeks, so if you've enjoyed this one, please subscribe and I'll see you next time.